African American writer. She was basically known for her narratives dealing with the lives of African Americans. And Morrison is also a Nobel laureate in literature, and she was awarded in the year Nobel Prize in the year 1993. Now, the novel Beloved was published in the year 1997, for which it was awarded with the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1988. And this novel is actually set during the, or rather, after the American Civil War. That that specific era is also known as the Restoration era, the years following, immediately following the American Civil War. And it chronicles the painful life experience of a black woman called Seth. Okay, what was the psychological impact of her time as a slave in a plantation, working in a farm, and what happens after she after she becomes a free woman. Although she is able to become, she no longer remains an enslaved woman, yet there is her painful history that affects her throughout, and which is throughout the remaining years of her life. And this is what is essentially seen in this novel. Now, before that, I would like to speak about the American Civil War. So, the American Civil War took place between the years 1861 to 1865. Okay, so it was fought between the northern states of the Union of America and the southern states that had seceded from the Union to form the Confederate States of America. The Civil War primarily began as a result of the controversy involving the enslavement of the black people. And later on, in 1865, the northern states emerged as victorious over the southern states, and certain changes were introduced for and the black people were actually certain rights were given to the black people as per the constitution. Now, in our story, we have this character called Seth. Okay, so she the story is based on a true account of a woman by the name of Margaret Garner, and her life story was actually read by Toni Morrison in an article. Okay, and this woman Margaret actually killed her daughter in 1856 because while she was escaping from her plantation owners, she was again caught. And in order to ensure that her daughter doesn't have to undergo the same kind of suffering that she underwent, she killed her daughter. So based on that story, Toni Morrison wrote this novel, okay, in 1987. So in our story, we have this character of Seth, okay, who lives with her daughter Denver in a household called 124 Bluestone Road, Ohio. So the novel begins with a description of the kind of life that Seth and her daughter were presently leading, okay, after years of enslavement. Then what we essentially come to know is that their household is haunted by a spirit. and that spirit is believed by the member, by the members of the community living around that area in Cincinnati, Ohio, that it was the spirit of Seth's daughter who was killed many years ago. So that story is gradually revealed in the novel, as the author makes use of several flashbacks to show that, to show what was going on in the present and what happened in the past. The common thread that runs between all the characters in the novel is that all of them were affected, at least psychologically affected, by slavery. And because of this, it continues to haunt the members of the black community who were living in that area of Bluestone Road in Cincinnati. Now, some of these characters, because it will be essential for you to know the main characters of this novel. The main characters are Seth, I have already said. Then you have her 18-year-old daughter, Denver. Then you have a character called Paul D, who is well, you can call him a friend, a fellow. Well, he was also a slave in the plantation, or rather the farm in which Seth was enslaved. So the name of that farm was Sweet Home. Okay, and it is with the arrival of Paul D in the present that Seth gradually begins to remember what actually happened in the past. She remembers about what happened in the past. So Paul D is an important character who links Seth's present with her past. And perhaps the most important character would be the titular character, that is Beloved. So Beloved was actually the name given by Seth to her, to the daughter, to the child that she killed with her own hands, uh, because she didn't want her daughter to undergo the same fate as herself, of leading the life of a slave. When she was when she was enslaved in Sweet Home, she was well, married to a man called Hell, who was also a slave working there along with Seth and Paul D and other black slaves in that farm. So Seth had 4 children. So she had 2 sons, and then she had this child that she killed, a 2-year-old daughter whom she named Beloved, and Denver was not yet born. She was pregnant with Denver. So a time came when the oppression and the humiliation faced by Seth and her husband, as well as the other blacks, black slaves over there, went to such an extent that they felt that they had to find a way to escape.
Hello, Sukanya. Hello. Other participants, can you hear me? Am I audible? Hello. Okay, so I guess there's some problem with Sukanya, technical problem, I guess. Let's wait for some time.
time was molested.
Hello, Sukanya. I think there was some problem from your end. I mean, we couldn't hear you maybe for a minute. Not exactly a minute, maybe 40 to 50 seconds.
Hello, am I audible now?
Now you are audible, but we couldn't hear you for the last maybe 1 minute.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm so
I
sorry.
think you will have to repeat your lecture once again. Not from the beginning, of course.
Yes, yes. So,
Just 40 to 50
so,
seconds
so
before. Yeah.
which part was missed actually? Uh,
Yes,
did
participants.
you, yes? Would anyone? So
Can you please help ma'am to recap? Yes, anyone from the participants? You were talking about
Ma'am, you said she
beloved.
was pregnant with Denver's child after that.
With Denver's. Hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, she was pregnant with Denver. Okay, Seth was pregnant with Denver, and she was, planning to escape from the sweet home farm along with her husband. But before they could do so, what happened was their master, the school teacher, and his nephews discovered about this plan, and they dragged Seth away and molested the nephews molested her. This incident left a deep impact in the mind of her husband, and left him insane. And she was also, affected by this incident. Later on, somehow she managed to run away from sweet home all over again. But then and she went to her mother-in-law, that is baby Suggs, who was her husband's mother. And by that time she had given birth to Denver. And the reason why this baby was named Denver was because uh, she was assisted by a woman called Amy Denver. And as a gratitude, as an act of gratitude, she named this newborn baby as Denver. Okay, who was the youngest child. Now she spent 28 days happily with her mother-in-law in 124 Bluestone Road. But after 28 days, her master showed up, that is the school teacher, along with his nephews, a sheriff and another person. Okay. And Seth was so horrified by this, that she decided that even if she is caught and taken away, she will ensure that none of her children will have to lead the life of a slave anymore. And so it was because of this fear and the trauma that was still affecting her, that the trauma of being molested by those nephews of the school teacher, that she killed her uh, eldest daughter, who was just 2 years of age at that point. She was also about to kill the newborn baby Denver, but fortunately she was saved by another black man called Stampede. And this was the incident which constantly traumatized Seth, and it remained a significant part of her history. Okay. So in the novel, we see that Denver had by this time grown up, and she is an 18-year-old girl. And her mother Seth was sent to the prison for a brief period of time, but she was she later on she was uh, well freed from the prison. and they continued to remain in that household of 124 Bluestone Road along with baby Suggs. So all those years they had been haunted by this spirit, which they believed was the spirit of the child that was killed by Seth years back. Okay. Now, in the present, what happens is Paul D, whom you remember was a friend of Seth, came back. He was unknown of what happened in between about the fact that Seth killed her eldest daughter and everything. He just wanted to come back into the life of Seth, okay, because he had some a kind of attraction towards her. And he also was aware of the fact that Seth and her daughter Denver were leading a lonely life. They became sort of, especially Denver, was very asocial after the death of her grandmother. And with the arrival of Paul D, it seemed as though the uh, the the gloominess or the darkness surrounding their lives seem to have gone away for a brief moment of time, because they seem to have forgotten about the presence of the spirit, and the spirit was also no longer causing any kind of turmoil in the household with the coming of Paul D. So after so when Paul D one day took Seth and Denver to a carnival, and after they returned back, they saw a young, a girl in front of their household, and she seemed to be a bit mentally deranged, and she was unable to speak properly, and there was some childlike quality about her which Seth was quick to notice. It seemed, for gradually it seemed as if she was like, she had certain qualities uh, that seemed to make Seth feel as if this is her dead daughter who has come back to haunt her again. And this was again enforced by the fact that this girl said, or she revealed her identity as Beloved. So, Beloved was the name of that baby girl who was killed by Seth. So, with the arrival of Beloved, what happens is we this so-called spirit was no longer creating any kind of disturbance, but then uh, Beloved, the this young girl seemed to have overpowered, had a powerful influence over the life of Seth as well as Denver. She also seduced Paul D, who was somewhat disturbed by this fact, and at times he also had a certain reminiscence of his past life as a slave. Okay, so he when he was working when he was enslaved, he had to undergo a double operation, because firstly he had to face humiliation in Sweet Home, and later on the owner of Sweet Home, that is the school teacher, sold him to another slave owner, and there he there were certain incidents which completely affected his later life. He had to face physical abuse, and he was kept locked in a box along with other slaves like himself. So Paul gradually came to realize that this girl called Beloved, who gradually entered into the life of Seth and her daughter, was not a very good influence. This was also realized by certain other members of the black community living there, such as Stampede. Okay, he felt disturbed by the presence of this girl, Beloved. Beloved continued to exploit Seth. She grew very demanding, and at the same time, she was able to completely control over Denver, who grew very attached to her. So, uh, what what happened was finally, to almost towards the ending chapters of the novel, Paul D comes to know about the truth behind Seth's house being haunted by this story of this Seth's house being haunted by a spirit. He was told by Stampede that years before, just after Seth escaped from Sweet Home, she murdered her daughter, and consequently it was the spirit of this daughter that continued to haunt the household. Okay, and he was also suspicious that this girl called Beloved was a reincarnation of, or she's a revenant of this dead daughter who came back to have revenge on her mother. So Paul D, when he came to know about this cruel act which was committed by Seth, left the household. Okay, and with his departure, the control of Beloved over Seth as well as Denver was complete. The members of the black community also saw what was happening to Seth and Denver especially, who was earlier a bit asocial. She decided to seek help from other members of the community, in order to free her mother, because she saw that Beloved was no longer a positive presence in their life. So she decided, Denver made a decision to move away from the household by finding some kind of employment for herself. So she got in touch with a white family who were in search of a servant girl. Okay, and she decided that it would be better if she found some kind of employment and found a kind of emancipated existence of her own. So when this man called Bodwin was, came.
I guess we have lost connectivity with her again.
And
Hello, Sukanya. Hello.
hello.
I guess there's some technical snag. I mean, we lost connection with you again for a few seconds. You were
Okay.
talking about emancipation. We lost you from there.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible now.
All right. So then Denver wanted to escape from her house in order to move away from the overpowering influence of Beloved, and because she also felt that she need to undergo some kind of emancipation. Consequently, uh, Consequently, she tried to find some employment outside, and she got in touch with a white family, okay, called Baldwins. And one day, Mr. Baldwin came to pick up Denver from her house. And at that moment when Seth saw this white man approaching, she was instantly, overcome with the fear that perhaps he has come to take away her daughters, especially beloved, again to enslave them. And she attacked him. She was overcome with a sense of with rage and was almost about to kill him, but she was prevented by other members of the community, and also the other black women who arrived in the household, feeling that the time has come to to free Seth from the overpowering influence of this girl called Beloved, whom they believe to be the reincarnation of the dead child. And this essentially, this incident was further, it the especially the last few chapters of the novel, all there is this tumultuous occurrence which happens. Beloved, on seeing this white man approaching, also leaves the household, and she is never heard of again. And what really happens is this uh, it seems as though the family comprising Seth and Denver, who were the only two members, because the two Seth's two sons are never heard of after that again. But they ran away years ago from the house when the house was haunted by the spirit. So they seem to have they seem to have freed themselves from this influence, from the haunting presence of Beloved, as well as memory of their painful past. Paul D too returns because he becomes a bit remorseful about on learning about what really happened, that in the past life of Seth, which forced her to kill her own daughter. And he begins to stay with them, with Seth, in order to take care of her. On the other hand, Denver leaves the household. She takes care of her mother, but at the same time she also she finds employment for herself. So in that way, the novel concludes where you know you have a moment where Paul D tells Seth that she is the one who is the best thing that happened. That she's she is the one who it's like an acknowledgement of the fact that the painful past was gone, and she was free from she was no longer a slave of the painful memories that retained from the past. So I would like to now talk about the themes, the major themes found in that we find in the novel Beloved. Okay. Is there any question you would like to up till here? Is it clear? You might write in the
Sukanya,
chat box.
I guess you should first finish your presentation. Maybe then we can take up the queries.
Okay.
We can have a few minutes of interaction at the end of the presentation.
All right. Sure. So coming to the themes of the novel, the first major theme that is present here is, of course, the psychological impact of slavery on the lives of the characters, of the different characters. So although we see that this character called Beloved is presumed to be the spirit of the dead child or a revenant, uh, you can also see that character in a symbolic sense. It is as if she she is a painful reminder of the past. So she creates both pain, but she also results in emancipate or emancipation or rather uh, what to say, free freedom of the characters, especially Seth, because she helps in freeing the mind of Seth from the grief, the sorrow, the pain of the past. So, in that sense, perhaps Beloved can be seen both as a character as well as a symbol. The psychological effect of slavery, of course, resonates throughout the narrative, and we find that most of the characters in one way or the other are affected by it, whether it is Seth, who is traumatized by what happened to her in the past, that she was raped by the nephews of the slave master, that is the school teacher, and at the same time she also, you know, she also has no well, no connection with what really transpired in her earlier life as a child. So there are certain traumatic incidents that continued to haunt her even when she became a free black woman, when even when she got her freedom. uh, Now, slavery similarly affects Paul D, because he had to undergo oppression and suffering, not only in Sweet Home but later on in another another, plantation, where he became a part of a chain gang. Okay, he was locked up in a box during the night, and he was also molested, and during the daytime he had to work. Consequently, he lost all emotions, and he frequently used to call his heart a tobacco tin box. Okay, so there was nothing within him. So this is something we see. Then there is this character called Stampede. So Stampede was a respected member of the black community living in Bluestone, in the area of Bluestone Road. So he had no connection with, he had no relationship, he had no relations or family remaining. So although he was a he was married, he had a wife, but because of the uh, because of the exploitation and suppression of his master, he was forced to, give away his wife to the son of his master. So this incident again left a deep impact in the mind of this man. Then there are minor characters like Ila, for example. Ila is a black. She is a young woman, so she had to face a similar kind of uh, you know uh, oppression like Seth herself at the hands of her master and her son. And but then she was not. She didn't turn weak. Instead, what she did was she decided. Ila tried to help other blacks. Okay, she became an active member of a secret organization called the Underground. It's a kind of a secret organization which was supposed to help black people, and it included not just blacks but also white people who favored the freedom of the blacks who were enslaved. So, what we see is these characters had been affected psychologically affected by slavery in numerous ways. Then, an interesting thing is related to the character of Denver. Denver herself was never affected by, she didn't, she was actually not a slave because she was not born at the time when her mother ran away from sweet home. So but she had she was indirectly affected by slavery, okay, because she witnessed her mother's gradual psychological deterioration, okay. And for that reason, perhaps, although she was not personally affected by it, yet she had seen other people around her who were affected by slavery. And she initially she is depicted as a very reserved and asocial girl who finds companionship only, you know finds companionship in beloved. And but later on she turns into a more confident young woman when she decides to take things in her own hands and find some kind of employment for herself. So the second important theme in the novel is motherhood, okay, because motherhood is a subject which you will uh, find in numerous, not just I won't say African American texts, but black writing as a whole. Um and this idea of motherhood resonates throughout Beloved. Okay, so one might say that the way Seth kills her daughter it seems to be brutal, as one of the characters himself asserts in front of Seth that that you are actually, are you a human? He seems to question whether she was a human being or a beast to have killed her daughter. So Paul D was the person who questioned her that are you really a human being or a beast to have killed your daughter so brutally. But what the fact was, Seth did it out of love, love mixed with pain. So she didn't want her daughter to undergo the same kind of trauma and oppression that she underwent in Sweet Home at the hands of the school teacher and his nephews. So for that reason, she believed that if her daughter dies, she will be at least protected from those years of abuse that she is destined to. And this idea of motherhood is also reflected through the character of Baby Suggs, that is the mother-in-law, who is the mother-in-law of Seth. So Baby Suggs is a honored character. She is a character uh, who is who is seen as a holy person. She is seen as a mother figure among the blacks in that locality. And one of the things that she does with all the black people living over there is she asks all of them to gather in an open space called the clearing, okay. And when they come for that meetings, she asks all the children, men and women, to to laugh, to to cry, and to sing songs. So it's like it's like an act of purging oneself of the previously of the previous trauma that they that was still there in their, that still affected their present lives. So she tried to cleanse their minds from that pain and trauma. uh, Interestingly, it is you know uh, it is when the household when the rumor spread that the house was haunted by a spirit, that they were haunted by the spirit of a child, that gradually baby Suggs becomes reclusive. She she becomes reclusive. She no longer communicates with anyone, and well, one fine day she passes away. All right. But she remains an important mother figure in the novel. The the idea of motherhood is also prominent by the fact that there are references to child being born, of conceiving, and one of this idea is very important. It's a theme that is very important in the novel. Uh, the third important theme, which I believe would be relevant in your study of Beloved, would be the idea of memory. Okay, so it's the past memories that continue to haunt the characters, and this memory is essentially it's collective. Okay, it's something which they know what it means to undergo pain. They know what it means to undergo abuse, okay, regardless of their gender, okay, regardless of their sex. Because we are told that in the narrative we come to know that not only the women are it's not only not just the women who are physically abused, even the men have to undergo physical abuse. And additionally, I think along with it, an important idea that I feel you should, you should try that I want to point out is that these two genders do not see each other, especially the men, the male, the black men do not see the black women as inferior. They see each other as equals in a certain way. For instance, uh, they work the same in the same way in the farm. It's not that the women are given the it's not that women don't have to undergo or they are not affected by the the kind of labor that is involved. They are seen as equals in the farm. So the men and the women are placed the in an equal. There is a kind of equalizing effect of slavery that seem to be present in the lives of these characters. Then I think the last theme that I want to speak about is the question of identity. How do the blacks see themselves? So I would actually point out to what Baby Suggs, says that she just before her death, she ponders about the nature of color. She begins to ponder about the nature of about different colors, and red is one of the colors that is also referred to. So Baby Suggs feels that white is dangerous because white is colorless. So color is actually something which is positive. So it's something which shows her identification with color. So she believes that being black is not something which makes her inferior, or being someone from colored race doesn't, such as there is a character called Lady Jones who is from who apparently is colored or from a colored race. So she doesn't see consider it as inferior, or something which makes her inferior. Baby Suggs doesn't see her as inferior, herself as inferior, or any of the blacks or people from colored race as inferior. Instead, she asserts that it is white which seems to be dangerous because it is colorless. So uh, what what we see is the question of identity is something which is present within in the novel itself. Finally, the novel becomes the novel Beloved is could be read as an important black narrative. All right, a black narrative containing elements of slave narrative. This there is, I wouldn't call it as a complete slave narrative, but I would say that Beloved contains elements of slave narrative. Now, what is a slave narrative? Now, slave narratives is actually a literary genre that speaks about usually having autobiographical elements, and speaking, and it is supposed to describe the lives of black people or African Americans who led their lives as slaves in plantations. Okay, this genre became you know more popular or relevant with the publication of different autobiographies of former slaves. Okay, for instance, you have the autobiographies of Frederick Douglass. Then you have another autobiographical text called The Life of a Slave Girl. So that is another important example of a slave narrative. Then there are also fictionalized fictional slave the fictional slave narrative, as in Uncle Tom's Cabin, which came out in around the middle of 19th century. We can say that Morrison's Beloved seems to be a successor of that genre of Uncle Tom's Cabin, where you see certain you see elements of slave narrative. So although the protagonist is a free woman, still she remembers, or there is the method of flashback is used to describe what happened in the past. Okay, the way she underwent different forms of oppression. All right, I think I would like to we do we have some more time?
Yes, we have time for interaction.
Okay.
So, thank you. I think you are done with your presentation, Sukanya?
Yes. Yes,
Okay. So I'd just like to add something. You were talking about the flashbacks that we find in the novel. So this constant, use of the flashback, I mean, going to the past and coming back to the present. I mean, and we don't find a coherent kind of a narrative in this novel, right? So there's no proper beginning, end, or middle that, unlike the other novels that we find, or other narrations that we find, but there is a kind of chaos, isn't it? There's a constant, switching back and forth, right? So this, I think, the author's intention was to, show or to project the kind of sufferings that these people, the blacks, they underwent and something which cannot be just left into in the past. It's there in their psyche, which they carries with them constantly. So maybe the use of the flashbacks, in a way, it was this idea also that the author wanted to project, that this conflict or the chaos or the suffering, the pain they underwent, it is there. It is there. Although, I mean, the civil war was over, although, I mean, many things were officially over, but the sufferings continued, and they carried it in their present. So maybe that was another, that was the reason maybe, why the author had used the flashbacks, going to the past and the present. This is something. The suffering is something which is which was there in their past, but which is still in their psyche. They cannot forget it. Maybe it's a way to show that. And another thing that I wanted to just add to you was, the identity. The issue of the identity. Yeah, the identity issue that we are discussing regarding this novel. So identity, not only not only of the characters, I mean, but identity. The author has dealt with the identity aspect from the historical perspective as well, from the historical perspective as well as the textual perspective. Okay. And as well as from the perspective of the author. I hope you agree. I agree to that. So that was just to initiate an
Definitely,
interaction. Yeah.
Of course, it's significant, and it's interesting that the Civil War took place like in 19th century, mid 19th century, and by the time Morrison got this book published, it was in 1987. So almost like 1 century later.
Yeah.
But even up till that time, this idea was very pertinent. This idea of Black identity, and I think it is still relevant today. Even today,
yes.
it's still there. It's still relevant, because if we
there,
look
like
into,
we have seen recently, I mean, what happened in the US. Yeah, very recently.
Yes, so I think it's very vital. It's a very relevant text, and this idea, this theme of identity, as Mona Lisa ma'am has said, I agree with that. It's very pertinent. Okay, from the historical context and also from the author's, own position as an African American writer.
Okay, so we have one query from Tanya Gogoi. She says, please elaborate on the first theme of the novel. I can understand the second and the last, that is motherhood and identity, but she's a bit confused about the first theme. So can you please,
psychological impact of slavery?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tanya, right?
Tanya Gogoi. Tanya, you can unmute yourself and you can interact with ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Tanya. So you are from third semester?
No, ma'am. I'm from second semester.
Okay. You are from which college?
I'm USTM.
Okay. So Tanya, you were asking about the psychological impact of slavery, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I think it's considered to be one of the most relevant themes in the novel itself, because it shows how the characters were affected by the system of slavery. Okay, so for example, if a person is denied certain rights, not it's not just about taking away one's freedom, but about humiliating someone, undergoing physical and emotional abuse. At the same time, the gradual degradation that that these black character, these African American characters are subjected to at the hands of their slave owners, it obviously leaves a deep impact in the mind of these characters. Okay, so that's like the impact of the trauma, you can call it a trauma, the trauma of the past continued to affect their lives even when they became free. Okay, even when they were given freedom, they were they were haunted by the trauma of the past. And the character which was most affected was Seth. All right, because she was not, she had to face oppression and humiliation as a slave. And at the same time, you can say that she was actually forced by this system of slavery to kill her own daughter, which no mother can ever think of killing one's own child. Okay, so that incident left a deep impact in her mind, and it continued to haunt her. Okay, that's why as somewhere I say that the character of Beloved, you just, you cannot just see her as a character. Beloved can be also seen as a symbol of you can also see Beloved as the trauma of the past that continues to haunt the psyche of the different of these black characters who were enslaved, okay, formerly enslaved. I hope it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other
Uh,
questions?
okay, Sukanya, we have someone who is watching the live streaming on YouTube as a question.
Okay.
It says, is the autobiography of Nelson Mandela described as a black narrative? And what are the literary works that maybe he wants to say on racism that we have in Indian literature?
Racism in Indian literature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we can look into the, you cannot, well, it's not, well, it's more than racism. I think you have certain other issues which are being depicted in Indian literature, as far as Indian literature is concerned, because when it entirely depends on how we define the word race. Okay, so racism in Indian literature, perhaps you can say that those texts which were written in during the pre-independence era by uh, white writers, maybe black white British writers in living in India, or perhaps those texts have more such glimpses. You can find glimpses of racism perhaps in those texts, but at the present moment I cannot think of racism being present as a prominent theme in well, by Indian
Okay,
author.
so I mean, he also wants to ask, is the autobiography of Nelson Mandela described as a black narrative?
As a black narrative,
Mm-hmm.
it is definitely a black narrative.
Yes.
It is definitely, you can call it a black narrative. There are two things where frequently these two words are like black narrative and slave narrative. These two words are used, right, John? Uh, when we think of slave narrative, it has to do more with the lives, like I said, with the lives of African Americans who were formerly enslaved in plantations. Uh, in case of black narrative, well, you can also include writers from the African continent, blacks, who, whose experience could be slightly different, okay, from the experiences of the African Americans enslaved in the plantations. Okay, the kind of racism that you will see in South Africa, for example, their experience will be a bit different from the experiences of the African Americans in America who were enslaved in the plantations, who used to be there. So definitely you can include Nelson Mandela's autobiography within that wider genre of black narrative. Okay, but well, uh, it can be. If it depends on whether we agree to it to uh, to expand the horizon as far as the definition of black narrative is concerned.
I
Yes.
hope that answers his query. We have another query from Dritishna. Dritishna, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question to ma'am?
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, yeah, Dritishna, please you can
Yes,
interact with the
ma'am.
speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I wanted to know if the house was really haunted or was it just the psychological state of the mother that made her see that girl which resembled her daughter?
Okay. Yes, that's one of the questions which have been always, asked in relation to this text. That whether this character, whether the house, whether 124 was really haunted, or was it just some kind of, effect of the trauma that, of Seth. So we can read it from both the sense, okay? Because beloved, the character, the haunting that took place, it was something which was witnessed by not just Seth, but also some of the other characters, as we are told in the novel, including Denver. Okay, and it is that those things actually forced the two sons of Seth to run away from their household. There is also an incident where they witness the marks of baby handprints on a cake, you know. So this was something which created fear in the minds of these characters. But more than that, more than the haunting itself, it's you can also look at it as an effect of slavery. Okay, it also has to do with psychology. Morrison has, perhaps left it for the reader to decide whether that haunting it's entirely dependent on the kind of reading that you want to do, whether you want to look at it from a psychological perspective, or you see that there are certain gothic elements, perhaps, supernatural elements perhaps in the text. But I think what is pertinent here is more than the supernatural element, it is their past which is much more fearful, which is much more troublesome. Okay, the the amount of pain that these characters undergo left such a deep impact in their mind that they are unable to get away from, to escape from it. So it I, I think you can look at it you can do a reading of the text from the side, as a beloved, as that haunting that takes place can also be something which happens in the in the psyche of the characters, psychology of the characters. uh, you have an adaptation of this novel as well. It was adapted into an award-winning film of the same name in 1998. Okay, I don't know if you have seen it or not. It's beautifully done. I think you can have a look at it. This
Yes,
movie
ma'am.
by the same name, Beloved. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, participants, anyone would like to ask anything else? No one? No other query? I guess they are very clear about the text now. Can we wind up the session?
Yes, surely.
Okay.
Actually, I would like to add something over here. Beloved is such a text that it is difficult to uh, tell cover every aspect of it in within 1 hour. But as much as possible, I have attempted to cover the the relevant aspects of these texts. However, I believe that this goes for all the students. I'm sure your concerned teacher or teachers will, explain the text in a broader context, and will try to include other aspects as well. Okay, and so you can go for the text itself is very important because you can read it from different perspectives. All right, there are different ways of reading the text. um, there if required, you can refer to certain ebooks or e-sources that I'll be sharing with your ma'am. All right, you can take it from her, so you can do some further reading for.
Or you can share
All
it in the
right.
group, I mean the WhatsApp group. You are already there.
All yes, that
Okay.
I definitely I can. So I'll
Yeah.
share it in the WhatsApp group. You can do some extra reading. And
So
so
yeah.
thank you so much, Mona Lisa ma'am. Uh,
Uh, in
I
fact,
would
we
like.
are so very grateful to you for your valuable, lecture and your time. It was indeed very informative and enlightening, and I'm sure this is, I mean, the students, they will at least get some idea from what is being said in the lectures before they actually go to the classrooms for, delving deep into the text. So at least they now have some idea about the text, and this is really going to help them, I'm sure about it. And thank you so much. Thank you so very much. I, on behalf of the Department of English, actually, I'd like to offer my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to you, for delivering this very, very interesting and very informative lecture. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you again soon, virtually, of course,
Yes.
and with another topic maybe.
Okay.
Yes, and thank you so much. And for the participants, we are meeting again on 31st with another lecture with Dr. Anindita De from DR College. She is going to speak on Through the Looking Glass by Louis Carroll. So I shall share the details with you later on in the group, and hope you all would be a part of that lecture too. So thank you all for your participation. Thank you and bye-bye. Bye, Sukanya.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.